Today we are going to start a session, and it is going to be all about React. And before diving, let's ground ourselves. In session one, we built a static task flow UI. Not exactly static. We used JavaScript, but we didn't go through the JavaScript. But although I provided the code, so the overall functionality was something similar to like this, where you could delete the task, you could add the task. So all those things were implemented. So now today what we are going to do, we are going to use React to build a similar kind of task management UI with filter and all, and with login page. We won't be implementing authentication, but we will create a login page and the 404 page, that is page not found. So last time what we worked on was the HTML structure. We went through the HTML structure, and then we implemented the style using the CSS, and then we didn't get the time to review the script part, but that's all right, because here what we are going to do is we are going to start again, and we are going to develop the task board using the React. And now our overall goal will be to focus on React. So you might ask that since all the functionality, the interaction part was done using our core JavaScript and HTML and CSS, then why to use React? So the only issue is that as the app grows, the code become a nightmare to maintain. And so basically the coding is simple. To manage the code base as application grow, the requirement changes, to maintain that complexity, that's why we have the React for the front end. And in vanilla JS, we track DOM state, that is document object model, the div or other element state, and we modified the DOM manually using the query selector and get that element by IDM, all those kind of methods. So more focus when we do the coding in vanilla JS is about maintaining the DOM structure, but the React removes that thing, and what we have to focus is just the state, that is the data, and how the UI should represent the data. As data changes, how it should update the data. So that's what the overall React is about, maintaining the state and displaying the data, and in a reactive manner. And we will get to those things. So before we start, let's create a project. Let me start the terminal. So let me go to CD project training, and here I will let's go to CD full stack. So I'm going to create a project in this. So here I'm expecting that Node is already installed on your machine. We already discussed from where to download and install the Node. So if node is installed, then npm command will be available to will be already installed in the machine, and we can use npm to manage packages. What are the packages? Packages are the pre-built library which can be shared uh, an organization, by open source community, or even by you. So and all the npm packages are hosted on npmjs.com. So this is the homepage where all the uh, Node.js packages are shared. Even your React.js and everything are over here. So if you if you look, the React is over here, and so when we do npm install, basically it gets the package from the npmjs.com, and you can also when you are going to start any open source project, or if you are using a project which can be accessed by public, then and of course it is not only limited to the public project. You can also host private npm projects as well over there. So private projects are those, npm packages are those which are only accessible under, for the particular company, organization, under group who has the access to the private keys. So let's move to our command line. So npm create, te- tell us to create a new package, and here this is base this and when you use create, you can type the package creator. White is vit white is one of, has become one of the standard package creator, uh, and at the latest tells which version to use. At the latest, if you don't provide so basically uh, so it might skip the minor version, but if you use at the latest, it will pick the most recently released package. The name of the package, task to client, the project what we are going to create, and the template React. It tells the why to use the React template. So this command, if we issue, so here it asks for whether we want to use ESLint or OXLint. What these are, these, so basically, as you know that JavaScript is not a typed language. That is, if you, there is no hard and very hard coded rules. It is very flexible language. So the chances are there that you might make some issue, make some error in your coding, or it might be against the standard, and the standard can be set under the organization or by the open source community, whatever the standard you are facing. By the way, if you use React, so React internally sets its own standard, which will look, so basically ESLint or OXLint are the command line application which help us to detect the issue in our code. It runs in the command line and it detects the error. uh, Error as in if there is any syntax issue, or if it is not following certain guidelines. So, and the guideline is very flexible. We can update the configuration. So let's say ESLint is a um, standard linting library. Linting as in code fixing, or you can say code checking library. And ESLint has a drawback that it is slow because it is completely written in JavaScript. OXLint, on the other hand, is a complete linting uh, tool. But the only thing issue with that is that It is very new compared to the ESLint. ESLint is a trusted component. OXLint is somewhat relatively new, but the benefit is that it is very fast compared to ESLint. So if your project grows into, let's say, into 100 megabytes of code base, at that time, or even if your code base increases just to be under 10 MB also, then in that case also, the linting process might take a lot of time if you use ESLint. If you use OXLint, it will check it in hundredth of less time. But for our project sake, we will use ESLint. Now, since we are going to create project which is going to use React and other some supported libraries, so our project is not going to be from scratch. It is dependent on the React. So here it is asking install with the npm and start now. What does it is asking is to whatever the dependencies we are going to use. And how does the npm knows what dependencies are there? Because we are asking why to create the project, and why it knows that we are using the React. So internally, it has the configuration. It knows what packages needs to be installed. So it will go ahead and install the dependencies. So it will take some time, few seconds, and then we are good to go. So you can see that it has installed. So we can go to the task flow folder and see it has created the all the code over there. So let's first I'll start the code editor, my Visual Studio Code editor, and here you will see the folder structure like this. So source is the main folder where you write all your code, uh, components, UI components. I will get into what components are there. Your style sheet, everything will go inside source. Outside the source folder, these are the configuration which you can configure your project. Package.json is the main uh, file which configures your project as a package. Whenever you add dependency, it gets added into dependency. So now you can see that our project is going to use two dependencies, React and React DOM. These are the required thing to implement the React project. And dev dependencies are those which are part of during the development. It is not pushed to the production code. That is, it is not part of your production release, and in a way, it doesn't get packaged. It is just during the development um, uh, for our help. So we already discussed ESLint. ESLint for linting, that is type code checking and code formatting. So, and this is the ESLint configuration. We will see this thing later on, maybe in session 5, where we get into the production session, when we are going to release into the production mode. So white configuration, as we already discussed, that we use the white as the project creator. So here, white is a layer uh, which help us during the development time with by for managing the development time extension. So here, one of the this plugin, React plugin, helps during the development time for packaging as well. So when the project is run, actually index.js is loaded in the browser with the starting point as main.jsx, which is inside the source directory. So these files get executed. We will see about those JSX files later, but let's get back to our structure. So index.html is the first starting thing which gets loaded, and internally it loads the main JSX. Um, from the coding perspective, your main JSX is the entry point of your main React application. Public folder is something where you will store all the static file. What do I mean by static file? Static files are logos, images, anything which can be downloaded and which is not in a way part of your application code base, front-end application code base, anything which is not going to change, anything, any PDF file, any document file, Excel sheet file, whatever the things which you want it to be publicly accessible, you can put it over there. So now let's start our project. So inside the folder, inside the project folder, in order to run the React application, we have to issue the command run npm run dev. And exactly npm run dev, how does the npm knows what command to run? It is mentioned over here in the script. So we have the command dev build lint and preview. So we can run npm run lint, npm run build, preview, and so on. So you can add your own command as well inside the script. But now let's see. So this is the shell application created by White, and so we are going to change the content of this thing and implement our task flow. So here, so the first thing what we are going to do is, you can see that in main.jsx, index.css is getting loaded. Import in index.css. Here, in order to, so as I already said that main.jsx is the entry point. And here you can import, by importing, what does it mean? We can include another code file. And the code file can be in the form of component. A component is, in terms of React, is a reactive HTML structure along with some logic written in it. We will get into those things, but here uh, it can be either component or it can be CSS. So here we are importing index.css and app.jsx. These things are the thing which React provide in order to initialize the React application. We have to so we don't need to change these things, the outer thing. This we have to keep as it is. What does it is initializes the React application, and our goal is to keep on creating small section of the screen, which is called as component. So we will see the component later, but let's again get back to the our CSS part. So here, the index.css, let's get back to our index.css. Here, as from our first session, we know that in order to create variable CSS variable, we define in like define like this, and these are the thing which White has created. We don't need this. We are going to create our own custom thing. So what are we going to do? We are going to delete everything, and we are going to put first what the which is called as reset CSS. In here, why we are writing everything from scratch for the CSS is just for the learning purpose. But in production mode, you generally use pre-built CSS library, for example, Bootstrap or Tailwind, which help us to write less CSS code and directly provides a lot of CSS classes, which help us to uh, set the color, set the paddings, set the grid and layout, and all those kind of things. But we are going to create all the classes from scratch. So first is called as the CSS, reset CSS. What it does is, first it sets the box sizing to be the border box. I already discussed that in last session that box sizing by default is content box, and the content box, the drawback with that is that it doesn't if you want let's say 300 pixel with a container, and you add a border of width 2 pixel, so your overall content will take 302 pixel. The drawback is that every element, because as your border size increases, your element will shift. Your box total content area will take more pixel. Border box, what it does is, it if your content area is 300 pixel, even if your border is 10 pixel, it will take only 300 pixel. It will reduce the space of your content area, but overall space it will provide will be 300 pixel. So the why that thing is beneficial, because when you are creating a complex HTML structure, complex layout, you don't want, because of adding border, you don't want content to shift. You want the other content, the content which is outside the uh, outside the content where you are applying the border, you don't want it to shift. So that's why you are going to specify border box as the box sizing. Margin and padding, you are resetting it to 0. You don't want you want control over the padding and the margin. You don't want uh, and here star tell, it is applicable for all the tags, for div tag, span tag, ul, li, whatever section, whatever the tag is there available, it is applicable to all. Star colon before and after are a way to a way uh, to create a virtual area, and you can you can add content to an existing DOM via the CSS. So so let's say if you have certain layout, and let's say you want to add some decoration at the start of that element without modifying HTML, you can use before or after to modify the look and feel of that particular content or that particular div. And you are selecting those things as well, and you are applying the reset to those things as well. And the second thing what we are going to do is, we are going to for the body, if we set font family whatever we want, if you want any custom font family, then you can use Google font, or you can include the font via the import statement. We will see that thing in our fifth session, how to customize the font. Anyways, background color, it sets your overall background color of your page. Color tells the text color and minimum height of your content, the overall content area. Similarly, you will set the default button behavior, that is, it should have a cursor as a pointer, and for the input select and text area, inherit, what does it mean? To use the parent um, set value. So here there is no other so let's say if input is wrapped inside a div, and that div has a set font family, then input will use that font family. Otherwise, it will keep on going in on upper direction of the hierarchy, and definitely we have the body at the top. It will use the body's font family. So this is the first thing. And if we now look at our layout, you can see everything is gone. White um, background is there, text with the color whatever we have set, and all the style has gone. Everything is gone. And now, since we don't need those things because we are going to create our own application, so first now let's get rid of these content. We don't need this. And from where this content is coming from, this is coming from not from main.jsx, but from app.jsx. So app.jsx is responsible for providing the content, and we are going to remove this. What we don't want, we don't, in fact, we don't want as of now any of these. In fact, I don't want app.css too. Let me delete that. And now I don't want state. I just want to return a simple DOM like this. So this is the bare minimum of your component. Component is a section of your screen which is responsible for providing the UI or an interaction. So here, your screen can be built up by using multiple component. So, and React will internally load those component and make it available on the screen. So here, you import the component, and inside the component, you have a function body function which returns the HTML content. And how we make the component dynamic, that is reactive, by maintaining the state internally inside the function, which will look into those things, and returning the updated content. And in order to make it to be importable, we have to write this line of code. Export default. So there are two ways of exporting. One is the named named export, and the other is the default export. So here I can go ahead and also name export a named export like this. So I can go ahead and do a named export also like this, and inside this I can go ahead and return and I can go ahead and import that as well. So in order to use the named import, you have to use curly braces and then like this. So you can see test component 1. Now, the thing is that it is a standard to have only one component per file, but you can have multiple component if your the exported component is using subcomponent which is not going to be shared across anywhere. You can define that component inside this. Otherwise, it is generally a best practice to have only one default export per component. So this, let's get back to our main.jsx and let's remove this and remove this. So this is there. So now you have to understand that in React, everything is a component, a self-contained piece of UI that has its own structure, logic, and optionally its own style. Earlier on, in our previous project, we had a global style where all the styles were loaded in one single CSS file. In React, we can have style per component. So in this way, it becomes very easy to not only maintain the UI structure, but also the style and how it should look and feel. And so let's review some rule about the function. So the two rules you have to always remember that the function name must start with a capital letter. So here, let's say, let me create folder. I can have a folder with small case, and generally it is um, preferred for root folders. But when you have a folder which contains a component, you generally name it in Pascal case. That is the first letter and uh, the second. So if a particular word is made of two words, so in this case, task card. So each word, first alphabet should be caps, and for the folder, it is not something mandatory, but it is a standard that the container to the component you have to keep in Pascal case. But this is mandatory that the component name should be in Pascal case. And when you export the function, you define it in Pascal case and export in a Pascal case. And um, so whatever the content you want to write, and when you want to use these, so for example, in our, let's say in our app, so you, while importing also, you write it in Pascal case and use it in Pascal case, and here you will get the output from the task, whatever the component is. So that was the first rule, and the second rule is that all the component must return the JSX or null. So what is JSX? JSX is your div, and we will get into the JSX rule. But JSX, you can understand that it is HTML structure, but also it can have the component as tag. So here it is not limited to only basic standard HTML. As we saw that in app.jsx, we created a component, and here in our standard HTML, we have included that as a tag, and we are returning the complete thing. So here, your component should either return the JSX, that is the HTML structure, JavaScript extension, or it can return null. So null is also pretty much valid, but it is not. So you can't you- so basically, if you uh, return this thing, so in the previous version of React, it would have thrown an error. Um, it is not a valid statement. It was not a valid thing. So here, if you, I'm returning an object, you can see that it crashed, and you can see objects are not valid as a React child. And so, so it's better you return either null or a React component. Sorry, a JSX. So now let's get back to our JSX. Uh, JSX looks like HTML, but it's actually JavaScript in disguise. So when we have a JSX like this, for example, like this, internally the React compiler converts this thing into something like this. This piece of code gets converted into React element, and it picks up the H1 class name, and with the props attached to it, children and props attached to it. So in a way, the React is converting the HTML structure into this kind of logical code. So that's why we call it as JSX, not as an HTML, because here React is compiling into a kind of programmable logic code. So here, first thing you should always remember that since this is also a valid statement, you can return it over here. And so here, since you can this is a valid statement to create JSX like this, but it is not recommended. Uh, Here you can see that although it is rendering the similar kind of thing like this, so there is no change at all. It is something similar to as it is, but never use this. Use JSX always. So let's get back to our code. So first thing, what so so there is a one difference between the normal HTML and the JSX is that in in normal standard HTML we have class which help us to set the class name for that particular element. But same classes can be applied for the React, but we use class name instead. So JSX always use class name instead of class. Second thing is that component must return single element. Here, this is not valid. You can't return, it is not possible to return two consecutive JSX element. If you want to return a structure like this where two elements needs to be returned, so if you look at here, you will see that transform failed. It is not a valid thing. In order to return two adjacent siblings, either you have an option to wrap it inside a parent, and then you will see the output like this, or else option B, when you don't want an extra wrapper wrapper DOM, you can use a feature called fragment, which renders no extra DOM. So here you can see it is getting the output. So in the previous case, when we had the div, if we inspect over here, so here you can see that the parent div, sorry, not this. Yeah. So here buy groceries and high priority has a parent div. And if we remove the div and use a fragment, then in that case, you can see there is no parent directly. The elements are getting rendered. Second thing is that we can embed JavaScript with curly braces because since this thing gets transformed into uh, JavaScript code, we can embed logic or JavaScript code using the curly braces anywhere in our JSX. So here, task title created, we can have something like this. The, the 5 plus 2. So here, so you can see that all the uh, um, design the dashboard, high priority, all these are coming from the JavaScript variable, and this mathematical operation is also getting executed. So we can embed the JavaScript using the curly braces. Here, inside the curly braces, you can write any JavaScript code. All the JSX must be self-closing tag. So here, in HTML, you can write the input without a closing tags, image without the closing tag, but that's not a valid statement for the JSX. It must have something uh, like this. If there is no, for example, div have a consecutive closing div, but input doesn't need something like this. Doesn't need like this. So what we do is we write self-closing tag like this. So now, so when we want a particular component to behave dynamically and make the component reusable across the application, like how we have a function which can be reused throughout the application based on the parameter or attributes we pass to the function. Similarly, we can customize the component using the props. Props is nothing but the uh, parameter set via the tag attributes which are passed as a prop to the component. We will look into those things. So, for example, let's say uh, so let's say if we have something, a task card like this, which should show the title, priority, and status based on the properties set. So in our app.jsx, instead of task card, what we are going to do, we are going to create 3 task card with with title, priority, and status set. So what the component does is whatever the properties we are setting over here are available as props. And if you go ahead and do console dot uh, So here, sorry, I wrote console.write, sorry, my bad. So here, whatever the props are passed to the from the from the parent are received inside the component as a attribute, and you can use those things to access those attribute which are called as props. So if you look at here, whatever the props we sent through the app.jsx attribute over here are now available in props, and we can access those value. And here can see that for all the uh, three time, and you can see that multiple time particular method might have been called. Uh, so each component was loaded 2 times. But anyways, that's not our concern right now. So here you can see whatever the attribute was sent were available as an object. You can use that inside your JSX using the curly braces. And the other way is directly use the destructor. So here directly you can provide curly braces and whatever the prop you want to access. So here title, priority, and status. So title, priority, and status. So these are the things which you can directly make it available and access it. So here you can see the output. So now let's get more into the reactive part right now. Uh, we'll try to understand what state and hooks are. So, so props are something which are read-only. A component can't change its own property, but component needs to change and manage data that changes over time. For example, a form, user input, or anything is which changes over time or based on the user action. For example, filtering, clicking on a button, uh, uh, providing certain input. So those things might change the internal state of your application, and based on that state, your JSX should get modified. Props, what we saw are something which are hard coded over there. Here, the component can't modify this thing on its own. Um, on the on the other hand, in order to maintain a reactive object or something data which changes over time and to react or automatically re-render the component, we have state. So in order to use the state, we import use state from React, and then we directly initialize the state like this. Use state count returns the value, and set count is used to update the state. And here what we will do, we will display. Here we are not using any props directly. we are we have created use state, state and a method to update the state. Here we are actually rendering the state, and we are on the button click. The on click is the event handler. Here we can write the event handler, or else we can define our function over here like this. Const, uh, you can say, for example, update, yeah, or increment. And here we can write something like this. So what it does is it updates the, it increments the count, and directly we don't modify the value of the state. We use the method to update the state. So here let's update the task card. So it should show two button, one button to increment and the other button to reset. So let's get back to here. You can see that here the state is maintained, and when I click reset, it is resetting to 0, because here I, on click of reset button, I'm setting back the count to 0. So, and the thing is that it is valid till your page doesn't reload. If you reload the page, then reset, the state get reset. Everything gets created again. So you have to always remember the critical rule: never mutate the state directly. So always remember that. Always use the method to update the state. For example, let's say if we have, uh, let's say we have a let's say task which is an array of list, let's say, and then we will have set tasks. So let's say if we want here here let's say on button click, let me remove this, set task, not set task, let's say update, I call update. So here let's say I have to update the task list. So we never ever update the state directly. We don't ever do that. What we do is we call set task. Now for updating the task list, what you can do is use the destructor. So here, and so what it does is it it is a JavaScript way of appending a new element at the end of the existing list. So here you are taking the existing list and then using this way to append a new item. So always remember that never mutate state directly. So now let's build our task card. So we want our task card to have task information, which is about task, and two buttons. In fact, to one button to delete the task, and the other a way to change the status of the task. So for that, let's update the task card code. So here we will pass the task as a prop, and then on delete event to handle on delete and on status change. And task internally is an object which consists of ID, title, priority, and status. Here we are generating the task based on the information we are passing through the prop. So similarly, let's create all the file first. Task card. and then we will task our module.css. We will add all the CSS in that. So here we will have, so we will have four components. We are going to have four components: task filter to filter the task, uh, add task form for creating new task, task card to display the card information, and now navbar the top header. So so it is a practice to keep the code in JSX and the related CSS in the same folder. And we are going to create three pages: home.jsx, login.jsx, account.jsx. Uh, so first, let us create the code for add task form. So we added the task card here. It displays the card information, and on the button, on the delete button, on delete method, which is also passed as a prop, is executed, is that callback function is executed. So that is overall component goal. Then we are going to create the task form. So here, it is also responsible for handling the submit. It has the form. So here, input the select button and the button. So on the click of the on the form submit, handle submit is called, and inside the handle submit, we are checking, we are validating the input if title is not empty, and then if everything is fine, then we call parents handler with the new task data which was provided in the form, and then again we are resetting the form, and then let's create the home page. So exactly, here the app responsibility will be not to directly load the component, but dynamically load the component based on the URL. So, so let's first update the filter component also. So here, and one more thing, what we are going to do is we are going to install a package called React Router. So React Router is a way to load the component directly based on the whatever the URL parameter is. So in order to use that, we have to install React Router DOM, and then in our main.jsx, we have to initialize that. So here we have to add the browser router. So import browser router, and then we have to wrap the app inside that. So what it does is it help the app component to track the route. And so how to manage the route. So here we this is always visible on every page. Everything, this structure will be always available on the page. This routes make it dynamic based on the path particular element gets rendered. So if path is root, that is without any path, any path mentioned, home component will be loaded, otherwise login or not found. So let's update the nav bar also. So here is the nav bar and the login page. And the 404 page. 404 page is something URL when doesn't match the route. Here, if URL is with some prefix, some if URL has some value, and if it's not login, then this it will catch this thing and it will render the not found page. So now let's see. So it is home JSX. Okay. Okay. It is here is the issue. And then issue is in add task form and task form. In fact, rather than doing this, we can have comment like this. So now you can see that it is showing our form, nav bar, and the task list, but it is without any, and with all the functionality, it is working. But in order to make it uh, enhance the UI UX, definitely we need to apply the CSS. So now let's update the CSS of all the files. So let me do that. So in add task form module, we will uh, add task form specific classes, and here we are going to use those classes. Here we are not, since we are not importing those classes, we are going to first import the CSS, and then we can use this inside our class name. So this way, if you look over here, you can see how the add new task got updated. Now we will do this thing for the rest of the component. Navbar CSS and the navbar. We will update the navbar JSX to use the imported styles. Similarly, so now the navbar also got updated. After that, we can go ahead and update the task card CSS. and add the task card. Similarly, task filter. So in this way, you can see that the overall layout has now been fixed. But here still, you can see there is a padding issue. We need to get back to our home page and create home.css and create CSS and use that CSS. So now you can see our overall page has become beautiful with all the filtering working. Here, the one thing, uh, we also implemented the router. So let's see the router. So if you go to the login page, it is showing the login page, URL matches. If you write any random thing, 404 page error you will get. Let's enhance the login page CSS as well. So for that, let's create uh, login.css, login.css, and also not found.css, and let's update the uh, not found page to show the to use the class from the not found CSS. So here, if you look at the, so you can see now it is in much better shape. Similarly, for the login page, let's update the login CSS and then use the class in our login JS6. So if you go back now, this is also enhanced, and here some of the value are getting validated over here, and the logic is over here, written over here. So let's what I will do, I will create a new GitHub project. Task flow React, and what I will do, I will make it as public, keep it as public, and create repository, sure. And then here, what we are going to do, we are going to follow the command. I will, inside the folder, I will do the git init. Then I will add all the created file. I will not just add readme file, but all the files. Then first commit, I will set the branch as main. These two commands, branch, git init, git branch, and git remote is one-time thing. When you push your code, after that you can go ahead with the changes, and then you can do git add, git commit, and then git push. So git origin tells the local git repository where to push the code to. So here we are going to push it to the github.com Anish Naumena workflow React. And if you create your own Git project, it will get pushed to that place. So here the code got pushed, and when you refresh the page, you can see the code over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share the code to all of you. So you can review the code. So here, what uh, what you have to okay, one thing what we didn't cover is use effect. Let's so we reviewed the use state. Use state is used to maintain the state of the component, and then use effect is there to react to the side effect and for persistence. Use effect runs the code after the component renders. Uh, so basically, when you want to do something on the data change, when the rendering is done, that is, you can make API call or time call a timer or use a service subscription or whatever you want to do. Uh, you can use the use effect, and the structure for the use effect is like this: use effect, and then the dependency, the state object which you want to watch for. So the pipeline is that user interact with the component update the state, rendering happen, and if use effect has the state name, then that code gets executed. So we have, if we don't specify the uh, dependency, then this run after every render. We rarely want to do that. So the other thing is run once after the first render. That is when the component is mounted. This is generally used to initialize the thing or make an API call. So for example, let's say your component is making an API call. Generally, you use that. Whenever the component is mounted for the first time, you load the data from the API. The second thing runs whenever the task changes. So here whenever the internal here task means over here mean is the state. So internal state uh, changes, then you can do whatever you want over here. So generally, uh, whenever you can execute code based on your state update over here. So for example, if you want to uh, set task update, you want to update the local storage, then you can go ahead and write the code in here. So let's see use effect we are using in our for example, you not found. What we are doing is after the rendering, when it observes the navigate whenever the navigation changes. um, let's go to the first our 404 page. So here you can see that after 5 seconds it redirects to our home page. How that thing is happening, that initially when the component comes over here, it gives gives this as an output, and it monitors for the navigate change. Since when we load a particular URL, rendering happens, and definitely the navigation, it receives that that DFD is the URL. So that means that it gets executed for the one time, that is whenever the navigation changes, and a timer is created where we are invoking navigate method, that is we are redirecting to the base URL after 5000, and then after this is invoked, then we are clearing the timeout. So this is one of the use case of use effect where we want to do certain thing after the state changes. So let's conclude our session today. And I have already shared my code. And in our next session, we will look into our session 3 will just a second. So yeah, session 3 will be about our backend engine. We will be using Node.js Express to implement the REST API. So we will we will be implementing the APIs. So have a nice weekend, and recording to this session will be shared via the email. Already I have shared the uh, URL to this GitHub repository, but this will be again shared to you along with the video. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.